We are living through a massive shift in artificial intelligence right now. And I mean, this isn't just another trend, it's a permanent sea change. We're moving way beyond thinking about AI as just another tool. We're entering a reality where AI is becoming an autonomous, thinking part of the business itself. This is the Agentic AI Shift, and today we're going to do a deep dive into what that really means.
Yeah, that quote just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? The sources we're unpacking today, from Accenture all the way to the World Economic Forum, they all frame this as a transformation that's just as big as the original digital shift from 20 years ago. So this isn't some add-on. It's a technology with a huge network effect that's going to touch every single part of the business. Why? Because at its core, it's about a declaration of autonomy.
And that brings us right to the core problem we're going to talk about. Take a look at this number on the screen, 13%. That's it. Despite all the hype, all the investment, Accenture found that only 13% of executives say they've achieved any kind of significant enterprise-level impact from their generative AI rollouts. So you have this huge gap between the promise and what's actually being delivered.
Exactly. The promise is absolutely enormous, but the delivery is kind of stalled out. And the reason is pretty simple. The technology is just moving way faster than companies can integrate it safely and effectively. So in this explainer, we're going to cover the strategic insights you really need to bridge that gap. We're going beyond just the tech to focus on the things that are so crucial, but often overlooked: trust and governance. These are the missing pieces you need to really scale agentic AI.
Okay, let's dive right in. Chapter 1, the Agentic Sea Change. To really get what's happening, we have to start with the speed of this evolution. I mean, it is just almost unbelievable. It's not like anything we've ever seen before.
This timeline really shows you this incredible compression of these huge tech shifts. I mean, think about it. 2023 was the wow year for GenAI, when it just exploded into the public consciousness. The sources are now predicting that 2025 is going to be the wow year for Agentic AI. That means we're seeing these massive, paradigm-shifting technologies pop up and then scale in these tiny 18-month cycles. That pace is actually faster than Moore's Law. And while that incredible speed creates all this amazing potential, it also creates a ton of friction.
And all that friction brings us right to our next section, Chapter 2, the Binary Big Bang. Now, this is the term Accenture uses to describe the very epicenter of this disruption, and it's all driven by this shift to agentic AI. So, Benita, let's just start with a really clear definition. What is an agent, and how is it so different from the chatbots that we've all gotten used to?
Well, the most critical word in that whole definition is right there: autonomy. See, a chatbot is reactive. It just sits there. It waits for you to type something and then it responds. An agent is proactive. You give it a really high-level goal, like plan a marketing campaign for our new product, and it doesn't wait for you. It goes off on its own, makes decisions, breaks that goal down into smaller tasks, and starts executing them. It can even run into problems and troubleshoot them, all without needing you to hold its hand every step of the way.
Oh, I love this analogy from the source material. It just makes the whole concept so clear, right? A hammer is a powerful tool, no doubt, but it's totally useless until someone picks it up and decides to swing it. The carpenter, on the other hand, understands the goal, like build a chair, and then figures out the entire process from start to finish. That is the leap we were talking about here.
And this new carpenter way of thinking is creating what the sources call the binary Big Bang. You can picture it as this explosion of new capabilities, and it's defined by these three pillars you see here: abundance, abstraction, and autonomy. So let's break down what each one of these actually looks like in the real world.
Okay, let's start with abundance. Now, we've all heard about AI making things more efficient, but this number is on a whole other level. Amazon rolled out a GenAI assistant for its software developers that, on just a single application update, saved the equivalent of 4,500 developer years of work. Just let that sink in for a second. 4,500 years on one project. A statistic like that completely changes the conversation from, can we afford to invest in this, to how can we possibly afford not to?
And that incredible abundance then leads us to the second pillar, which is abstraction. As you can see in this chart, we're basically moving away from needing to learn complicated interfaces or write code. Instead, we can just use plain English. It transforms our software from this complex toolbox that you have to spend years mastering into an intelligent partner that has a creator built right inside, one that you can just talk to. This is a huge deal, and it represents this profound democratization of really high-level technical skills.
But it's that third pillar, autonomy, that's the real game changer. This is where systems go from just doing tasks to actively orchestrating whole parts of the business. And you can see the market is just racing to grab this capability. As this bar chart shows, corporate mentions of Agentic AI shot up a staggering 17 times in 2024 alone. I mean, that kind of exponential attention shows you exactly where the entire industry is placing its bets.
And, that frantic race towards autonomy brings us right to the single biggest challenge that leaders are dealing with. So let's dive into Chapter 3, the inevitable trust crisis. Because the relationship here is actually pretty simple. The more autonomous an AI becomes, the more absolutely critical our trust in it becomes.
This really is the question at the heart of this entire shift. It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? On one hand, you've got this technology with what seems like just boundless potential for creativity, for efficiency, for discovery. But its practical use, its actual real-world value, might be completely limited by a very human factor, our ability, or maybe our inability, to trust it. And leaders are completely on board with this. The data from our sources is crystal clear. If you look at this chart, a whopping 77% of executives believe that unlocking the true benefits of AI is only possible if it's built on a solid foundation of trust. It's not some nice-to-have feature. They see it as the core enabler for everything else.
The sources use a fantastic analogy to make this abstract idea really concrete. It's like how we grant autonomy to a child. At first, when trust is low, you set very tight boundaries. You require constant supervision. Stay on the sidewalk, hold my hand. Right? But as they show you they can be reliable over time, your trust grows. And you gradually widen the boundaries of what they can do. They can walk to the store by themselves. The exact same principle applies to AI. Trust and autonomy are completely inextricably linked. And that analogy really shows that this isn't just one single problem. As this slide lays out, the trust crisis is a really complex challenge with 3 different dimensions. First, there's system trust. That's the technical fear that the AI is just going to do something unpredictable or, hallucinate. Then you have customer trust. That feeling of emotional betrayal a customer gets when an interaction they thought was genuine turns out to be with an AI. And finally, there's employee trust. That deep-seated fear that this technology isn't here to help them, it's here to replace them. So if the trust crisis is the problem, then what's the solution? Well, that brings us to Chapter 4, Governing an Autonomous Workforce. We need to start thinking about governance not as some restrictive set of rules, but as the practical, enabling toolkit for actually building and maintaining trust in these new autonomous systems. The World Economic Forum's framework, which you can see in this table, gives us a great place to start. The first part is classification. This is basically about writing a detailed job description for your AI agent. You have to clearly define its function, its role, how much autonomy it has, and what authority it has. Then, once you've classified it, it needs really rigorous evaluation that goes way beyond just checking if it completed a task. You have to stress test it and see how it holds up against all sorts of unexpected, weird edge cases. And this leads to this idea of progressive governance, where the safeguards you put in place scale with how risky the agent's job is. This slide shows the 2 main models pretty clearly. For high-risk decisions, like, say, a major financial transaction, you would use a human-in-the-loop model. That just means a person has to physically approve the action. For lower-risk, more established tasks, you might use human-on-the-loop, where a person is just monitoring things and can jump in if they need to. Trust has to be earned over and over through this kind of reliability and transparency. Okay, so moving from that internal governance challenge to how this stuff is applied out in the world brings us to Chapter 5, AI's new physical form. Because this autonomy isn't just a digital concept, it's forcing this massive reinvention of how businesses operate, both in the customer-facing digital world and in the physical world. On the customer side, there's a huge risk. As more and more businesses lean on the same generic large language models, every brand could start to sound exactly the same, just bland, neutral, and totally interchangeable. The counter strategy, as it's defined here, is personified AI. This is where you intentionally train your agent with your unique brand personality. SiriusXM did this with their agent Harmony. They trained it to understand brand-specific language, even slang, that a generic AI would totally miss. That's how a brand's identity actually survives in an agentic world.
Now let's pivot to the physical world, because this is wild. Foundation models are now literally giving robots bodies, and it's turning them from these narrow, single-task machines into generalist partners. This is all driven by the key advancements you see here. First, there's contextual understanding. So picture a robot like Figure 01, not just seeing an apple, but understanding that it's food. Second, communication is shifting from complex code to just simple verbal commands. And third, we're seeing the rise of the multi-purpose humanoid body, which is designed to navigate a physical world that was, well, built for us.
And the market potential for this, it is just staggering. Goldman Sachs estimates that the global market for these humanoid robots could hit $38 billion by 2035. This isn't some far-off science fiction concept anymore. This is the next frontier of physical operations, and the economic bet is already being placed. So, if our digital experiences and our physical operations are changing this radically, what does it all mean for the workforce? That brings us to our final chapter, Chapter 6, the Human-Agent Partnership, and how we have to redefine the future of work.
You know, leaders today are at a really critical crossroads with the two mindsets you see on this slide. The first is automation of people, a framework that basically sees AI as a tool for replacement. This only creates fear and completely undermines employee trust. The sources are really clear that the only sustainable path forward is augmentation with people. This creates a virtuous cycle where employees use the AI learns from them, and the workers themselves become the engine of transformation, not its victims.
This fundamental shift means the entire talent strategy for a company has to change. I mean, when an AI can handle all the technical grunt work, what skills become the most valuable? The sources point to models that prioritize what they call the hospitality quotient, things like empathy, kindness, and integrity. The philosophy is that these uniquely human traits are way harder to teach than the technical skills an AI can now provide. Just like the quote says, human connection is the new premium commodity.
And that brings us to the final frontier, which is already starting to emerge, the Internet of Agents. We're not just talking about agents talking to people anymore. We are talking about an entirely new automated economy of agent-to-agent commerce. And this isn't just some theory. We're already seeing new standards being developed, like the Agent Payments Protocol, or AP2, which is being designed specifically to let autonomous agents make secure, auditable transactions with each other.
And this emerging economy brings us to the ultimate challenge of this new era. Just imagine your company's highly trained, personified AI agent entering a negotiation with a customer's personal purchasing agent. Both of them are capable of researching, negotiating, and making deals completely on their own. The old rules of human persuasion and emotional connection, they just change completely. And this leaves us with a final, really provocative question that defines the next great challenge. How do you design your AI not just to win the emotional trust of a human, but to earn the algorithmic, predictable trust of another autonomous machine? That is the